Are you a dropshipper or an e-commerce store owner and you heard about how great private agents can be, but you don't really know how to choose because you've also heard some horror stories about bad ones as well? Hey everyone, this is Dayu from EcommOps. Today, I'm going to talk about how to choose a private dropshipping agent. This is now a continuation of a previous video that we made on just private agents in general. So I'm going to link to that below. If you don't know what private agents are, watch that video first. All right, today we're going to talk about first a selection criteria for how to think about what to look for in terms of private agents. We're going to talk about how to find and actually choose one that is right for your business. And finally, some risks and watch outs. Now, full disclosure, we at EcommOps, we are a private dropshipping agency, but I am going to try to keep this as unbiased as possible because I know that not everyone's going to be a perfect fit for us. All right, so let's first talk about what do you actually look for when selecting a private agent. The first thing that a lot of dropshippers don't realize is that the location of your supplier really matters. So there's two key areas that you really want your agent to be based. So one is the Shanghai, Zhejiang, Yiwu, and Hangzhou is part of this as well, by the way. That area has a lot of factories that are producing relatively cheaper goods that are really perfect for dropshipping. So most things that you want to dropship, they are going to be produced there, except maybe some high-end electronics. Now, the benefit of this area, especially if you're based in somewhere like Yiwu, is that the factories tend to be so close that if your agent wanted to, sometimes they can even just drive half an hour and get stock that way as opposed to shipping it. So generally speaking, the big benefit here is that stocking tends to be a little bit faster. But the downside of being based in that area is that you're more limited, or the agent is more limited in shipping options. They don't have the same access to a lot of the express options. They have to fly out in mainland China, usually through Shanghai. So just generally speaking, the shipping options aren't as good, reliable, or as fast. Now, the other big area is going to be the Shenzhen area and surrounding. Now, the big benefit here is that, so they also do have a lot of manufacturing. They focus more on electronics, phone accessories, and things like that. However, there's a lot of other products made there as well. But the big benefit here is that they have access to all of the faster express shipping options that are still relatively affordable. And a big part of the reason is that because the planes fly out of Hong Kong, which generally speaking has a lot more reliability, a lot more speed, especially in a period of right now where there's COVID and there's kind of political uncertainties around mainland China. Now, this is where you're going to get the fastest shipping speeds, the most shipping options. Now, technically speaking, there's going to be some products that you're going to have a little bit more time to get stock. So that's kind of the trade-off there. However, it really depends on what kind of agent you're working with and how you're working with them. For example, if you're working with an agent and you are holding stock with them and pre-planning for stock, honestly, anywhere in China, shipping to anywhere, it's going to take anywhere between 1 to 3 days. So if you're actually holding stock with your agent already, then really getting stock as fast as possible is not as important. And then you really want your agent to be based in Shenzhen because the faster, more reliable shipping lines. So I think that Yiwu, Zhejiang, Shanghai area is still a pretty good option, but I think that's probably a better option. It tends to work a little bit better if you don't really want to hold stock with your agent, so your agent can just get stock quicker, especially for those products that are actually produced there. But it really depends on your product. Now, if your agent is based anywhere else in China, they have no advantage. They're not really close in manufacturing hubs. Their shipping is really not great. So try to avoid agents that are not based in one of these areas because they're there probably just because they want to be there or the cost of living is lower, whatever it might be. But really, there's no advantages to being anywhere else in China. Now, this is something that's really important. You want to make sure that your agent has relationships, real relationships with factories. A lot of, especially smaller agents these days, they used to be AliExpress sellers, and they would just source products for you looking on Alibaba or the Chinese version of Alibaba and just kind of buy on a website. You don't want to work with an agent who just does that, especially if you're scaling. You want to work with an agent who actually calls up factories, starts relationships with them, and make sure that they're communicating with them and planning your supply chain, as opposed to just ordering batches of goods from the Chinese version of Alibaba. Because if they're doing that, maybe during normal times, especially if your product is simple, that could be okay. But as you're scaling, they don't have that same type of relationship with the factory to be able to kind of plan effectively and be able to reserve production capacity for you as you scale up big. Now, I know that not everyone is going to be scaling up to hundreds or thousands of units per day. However, if you're in this business, you want to get there. So therefore, when you are looking at potentially 500, 1,000 units per day, that could be a factory's entire capacity or 25% of their capacity. So this is why it's so important that your agent, especially as you're scaling, needs to have direct contact and relationships with the factories themselves. You also want to make sure that they have great communications. It's not just being able to speak English and communicate with you. That's only a small part of it, although obviously that's very important. You want to make sure that they do things that they actually understand your needs. They're actually transparent with what's going on. They have good response speeds. They actually give you expert advice. And then obviously they actually are able to communicate with you well in good enough English at least. You want to make sure that they have great after-sales support and a clear policy that supports it. Part of it is going to be pretty obvious, right? You want your agent to be responsible for defective products, any shipping damage, anything that's lost in transit. But one thing that I realize that a lot of people don't necessarily think about too much is their actual policy for dealing with these issues and what their actual response rate is or response time is to deal with these issues. I mean, I'll just give you an example. Like if you use AliExpress before, especially if you use a mediocre or bad AliExpress seller, you might have experienced something like your package is delayed like 60 days and then you try to get some kind of compensation and then the seller's like, oh, well, wait 30 days more. And then if it's still not there, then maybe we'll consider a refund. Stuff like that doesn't really help you, right? Because the thing is your customers are waiting. So you want to work with an agent that you feel full confidence that if there is an issue, and sometimes issues do happen, you want to feel that not only the agent is actually going to be responsible, but they can actually give you a response relatively quickly, so then you can give the right response to your customer, whether they're going to get a resend or you're going to get refunded at least the shipping and fulfillment and the product cost, so that you don't lose all that money if you do actually end up refunding the customer. The other thing is that depending on your needs, you really do want to make sure they have the right fulfillment process that you're really looking for. So there's kind of three main options. The one on the left is kind of the easy one. I mean, if you're working with an AliExpress agent, you can actually just ask them to create a VIP link for you. It's actually pretty flexible. You order just as if you order on AliExpress. You can use a credit card. But the downside is that it's still the same as AliExpress ordering, right? So you're still kind of dealing with probably iffy sellers and they don't care too much about you. That's kind of a downside there. The second main method is using something like CSV fulfillment, where you send a spreadsheet with all your orders on a daily basis to your agent and they send tracking numbers back. So this obviously is going to be less manual work than if you're just ordering on AliExpress. You do one batch at a time. You might spend 10 minutes, 30 minutes a day giving orders and then uploading it back onto Shopify, but it's still not perfectly efficient because that time and effort is still stuff that you can be really spending on others. But even some of our own clients actually like the CSV method. And then finally, you have app integration. So either they integrate using something like Xiaomi, which is very popular around agents, or maybe they're large enough that they actually build in their own app system. So this is going to be obviously the easiest. It's going to be automated and you're not going to have to worry about your orders. Now, the downside of this though is that you still need to figure out some good way to kind of track your balance with your agent. How much do you owe them? Are they going to stop fulfilling for you if you run out of money? Do they have to pay you in advance? So that obviously you still have to figure out, as opposed to CSV, you might just be able to pay by batch. So obviously it's a little bit of a downside, but if you have a good relationship with your agent, you trust them to just fulfill your orders on a daily basis, the app integration is really the best and easiest way to go about doing things. Now, this piece is very, very important. If you have high ambitions, you want to make sure you work with an agent that can actually scale to your needs. You might think that, right now, I don't need kind of like a more scalable agent. But the thing is, like, we see it over and over again with our clients. You can go from 30 to 50 orders per day to 500 orders per day in a matter of a week or two. And when you pick your agent, you really want to try to find a long-term partner who's not going to outgrow you. Now, there are agents out there, but there are so many agents out there who are very, very small. They're like one person with a team, and they might just be like some random person looking for business on Facebook, and they might have a maximum capacity of like 500 or 1,000 orders per day, but that's really not enough for you to scale, and I'm assuming they have multiple clients as well. Okay, so this piece is so critical. You want to work with known entities or at least recommendations. If you ever been in a dropshipping group, you're going to see a lot of people just offering their services, refer you, but I mean, you have some group member who you don't actually know, and they say, hey, this so-and-so is great, I'm going to refer you. You really don't want to trust this. So there's kind of two main reasons why this is kind of risky. The first is that, I mean, technically speaking, anyone can be a so-called agent, at least perceived to be one. All you really need is you have to have a Facebook account, maybe a WhatsApp account, and then just say you're an agent, right? There's no barrier of entry to just saying that you're an agent. And actually, a lot of newer agencies do this. They hear about this being great business, so they get into it without much experience and try to get business this way. And I think that this is admirable. I hope the best for them, but still, for the sake of your business, you want to avoid just random agents who you don't really know about. The second reason is that many who recommend agents, they either get compensated, directly compensated, and they get a referral fee or affiliate fee, but honestly, they might not even have much experience, or they might actually literally be fake accounts. Now, I'm not pointing fingers here, but just generally speaking, be careful of working with anyone that is not a known entity or has recommended by others that you trust and know. The reality is that there is going to be a price range of agents that you work with. There's going to be some that are going to be cheaper, and there's some that are going to be more costly. I will be honest with you guys that we're definitely on the more costly side. We're not the costliest, we're still reasonable, but we're definitely going to be a little bit more expensive than other options out there. And I mean, to be frank, that's not the best fit for everyone. It just really depends on your goals and which type is more suitable for you. So, for example, I mean, if you are running a store or a product that has a very low price and margin, and maybe the product quality is a little bit less important, it's a very simple product, or maybe you just don't care that much, or customers don't seem to care that much, and shipping expectations aren't that great, and you don't really want to scale this long term, maybe you're just kind of testing the waters, maybe you're just starting out and kind of see how this works, then then go ahead and choose a cheaper agent. They're not going to be as scalable, but if you're going to kind of just try this out and kind of make some quick bucks off this product and move on anyways, then maybe that's a better fit for you. For a more costly agent that has more full service, more scalable, just more care and expertise, this is something that you want to do if you have more margins, obviously, if your product quality is really important. So these are kind of products that just tend to be more risky in terms of quality. Electronics, for example, more complicated products where you really want to give the best experience for your customer, and shipping time is super important, and you want to build this into a real brand. You want to have some more longevity and actually build a long-term business so that you're not just testing products and watching them die out after a month or two. So this is where you really want to invest in a relatively more costly agent to help scale your brand. Now, obviously, it's a very simple spectrum. Some costly agents are going to be crap as well. So this is more of a generalization, but this is how roughly you should think about it when you're thinking about the pricing of the agents that you're considering. Now, one thing to note here, though, is that when an agent that you think is really great quotes you a slightly higher cost, don't just look at those costs as well, because everything else that they might offer, better sales services, better quality, just lower returns in general, it might actually add up. I mean, I would almost say that our clients, even though technically speaking, we might charge a little bit more, but I'm talking about like, tens of cents more, not like dollars more. They almost are always more profitable actually working with us, and probably more profitable working with a more expensive agent because of all the benefits and long-term potential that we help them actually reach. Shipping obviously is going to be one of the most important parts of fulfillment and dropshipping in general. Now, you really want to think about what kind of shipping do you actually want to use. There's going to be some cheaper options, ePacket, AliExpress Standard, for example, China Post. I mean, these options are going to be cheaper. They're going to be less reliable, but maybe they're the best choice if you want something that's a little bit cheaper. Actually, now ePacket these days are actually kind of very similar in price, as other lines, but that's kind of more unique because of COVID. And then on the right, the more costly special lines, UnExpress, which we use a lot. There's 4PX, CNE, there's Yanwen as well. These are the options that you want to consider when you really want to scale and get faster shipping and more reliable shipping and build a brand. It's very important though that you actually, if you want to work with one of these special lines, you need to work with an agent who knows how to use these, because these lines, they're very much B2B kind of businesses. You're not going to get the same results unless you're working with an agent who actually uses UnExpress to a high volume so that they actually get the full benefits of using that line. By the way, if you guys don't know what special lines are, if you don't know what UnExpress is, I'm going to link below as well talking about UnExpress specifically, but the video also goes through the benefits of using a special line. If you've been in this business for a while, you know that there are certain things that you really need to plan for. So the two biggest ones, and there's a couple more of them, but the two biggest ones are going to be Q4 holiday peak season and Chinese New Year's. So for holiday peak season, first of all, your sale is going to go crazy here if you do things right, but there's going to be production delays. There's going to be potential shipping delays. That's when you want to have everything as efficient as possible. That's when you want your agent to be talking with factories and planning out your production. So if you don't have an agent who knows how to deal with that period, you're going to get really bad delays. They're going to take 2-3 weeks to get stock for you, and then it's going to be like early December, and there's no way you can ship it to your customers in time for Christmas, and essentially you miss out on the entirety of the actual Q4 peak sales season. So it's very important they actually have experience dealing with this for at least a year or 2 years. Chinese New Year is also very unique as well because, all of China takes like 2 weeks off. Now, different agents deal with this differently. Some would make sure they plan for stock ahead so the disruption is very short. You want to make sure that your agent is not taking a very long period off for Chinese New Year's. What we do and a lot of agents do is that they only take time off when actual logistics off, which is much shorter than the rest of China takes off. For those of you that might be selling or considering selling more unique products, so anything that's fragile, anything that has liquids or gels, anything that's like maybe oversized, these all require unique expertise. So if you're selling one of these products, and there's probably others out there, so it's something that's more unique, you want to make sure that your agent knows how to deal with these, because if they don't and they just try to send this stuff anyways through whatever, you're going to get broken products. You're going to get like a 30% breakage rate if they don't know how to deal with fragile products. You're going to get 30-50% of your products rejected if you're sending a liquid and they're not using the right liquids line. So all of this stuff you really need to be careful of if you're selling one of these more sensitive, unique type of products. All right, so those were the basic criteria for how you should think about agents. There might be a little bit more, and it depends on your business, but those are probably the most important ones. And a lot of these, actually, I don't see a lot of dropshippers consider too much, and they just mostly think about the pricing and the shipping times. Now let's talk a little bit more about, okay, how do we take action? How do we actually think about finding and selecting agents? So generally speaking, there's going to be three main ways for you to find agents. You're going to have Facebook groups. You can ask for agent recommendations there. You're going to have freelance platforms. If you search for dropshipping agent on Upwork, for example, you're going to see a lot of options there. And then what I think is still really the most important is to just ask for recommendations from your actual friends who are in dropshipping or actual close-knit community. This is very different than just posting in a random Facebook group or even a large Facebook group and random people recommend things because we just talked about earlier that they might just be shills or get compensated for it. The best way to do things is first work with a known entity and just try to get recommendations from other dropshippers that are doing big numbers and are already working with agents already. All right, so at this point, you might have already had a couple of agents to compare as well. And then for each of them, you want to take a very similar type of process. Now, certain agents are going to be different. Some are going to want you to fill out a form, some just chat with you. So just follow their process, the contact. Don't force them to give you a form if they don't have a form. Provide as much relevant information as possible. So what the product link is, what SKUs you're selling, how many orders you have per day, all the shipping countries, and really anything else that's important and relevant. Do you care about branding? And try to get the same type of questions, the same type of information to all these agents so that they can provide you with information to compare. And then you compare quotes. And then at some point in the process, whether it's after you get quotes or during, you definitely want to continue to ask a whole bunch of questions that are relevant to your business as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We have a list here of suggested questions that we think that you should care about. I'm not going to read it all because it's a long list. Check out this list and make sure that you ask the key questions that really also matter for you as well. You might have some questions that are really not actually on this, but generally speaking, these questions are really tied to what I think are the main selection criteria that you should care about for any kind of dropshipping business, no matter what your needs are. And you want to ask these questions and you want to have some kind of internal idea of how you prioritize the importance of these questions based on your business needs. If you want, you can kind of create like a rating system. I wouldn't go that crazy, but at least have an idea of how important each of these questions are to you and how you rate their importance. You really want to avoid only focusing on price. Unless that's literally all you care about, but I don't think you should. If you've been in the business or you talk to people in the business, you're gonna hear a lot of people getting just completely screwed and just ruining their stores by going with the cheapest possible solution, and it really slowed down their business. When you are working with a fulfillment agent, you're evaluating a partner in your business, or you should be evaluating a partner in your business. So you want to put a lot of thought into this because that agent can really make or break you, especially as you scale. So tracking numbers. Now, I actually pulled this separately from the list of questions because I think that this is very, very important because obviously shipping speeds are important and it's a little bit nuanced in how you want to ask for these. So what you want to do are a couple things. You want to ask for a batch of tracking numbers, 50, 100, or whatever it might be. And you want to ask for ones that have been delivered recently so that they're not sending you tracking numbers from, last year, September, when there was no such thing as COVID. And you want to ask for tracking numbers that are all sent around the same day and to all the countries that you care about. Now, why should they all be around the same day? Because it is a very, very common practice for agents just to pick their top like 20%, 50% of delivery speeds and show you those tracking numbers and cherry pick it so it seems a lot better than it actually is. They might say, oh, my shipping is 7 to 10 days, but in reality, it's actually 7 to 20 days, but they just give you the 7 to 10 day example trackings. But if you ask for a lot of tracking numbers, if you ask for them all sent around the same day, when it's sent, not when it's delivered, by the way, all sent around the same day, then it's going to be much more difficult for especially a smaller agent to actually be able to cherry pick tracking numbers. If you really want to be a little bit more precise, you can even probably ask for, okay, I just want to see your tracking numbers that were sent out exactly 30 days ago, and I want to see how they perform, and I want like 50 of them or 100 of them. So this really reduces the chances of your agent being able to give you just cherry-picked trackings. As you're going through this process, you really want to be patient. The right sourcing process, it really should take more time, especially if your product is, relatively new. The right agent, they need to call the factories. They need to confirm exactly all the details, the quality control process, what the factory's capacity can be, how much can they produce, the lead time. They absolutely 100% confirm what the pricing and the weight might be, so it's going to be totally accurate. These are the things that we do and good agents should be doing. And what this does is that this obviously takes more time. You're not going to get a response in 8 hours if we have to do all of this, but this might take a couple days days longer, but it ensures a much smoother start, which is when it actually really matters. Now, what a rush quote could mean is that they could just be searching on Alibaba. Literally speaking, you could just spend 5 minutes and search on the Chinese version of Alibaba, and technically speaking, you can get all the details, but they won't be very accurate. And they're not really talking to these factories, and they could have outdated info from the Alibaba link as well, and they're just rushing into things. And what happens here is that, okay, they're going to get back to you in 24 hours, and you feel, oh, these guys are great, but then when you actually get started, everything could break down because they never coordinated with the factory in the first place. So generally speaking, I mean, it's not a hard rule, but give great agents a little bit more time. Be okay if there's going to take a couple of days. Don't just go with the very first response that you get, and especially don't feel like their response time is anything indicative of the overall process, how will they communicate once you actually start working together. I've seen just so many examples of people thinking an agent is great because they respond right away, but then that agent is really just focusing on getting more clients. They neglect serving the clients, and they have tons of issues when they get started, and communication is really bad when that happens. So, this is something that you want to be careful about. Now, I know that sometimes you're in a rush. Right now, honestly, like you should try to avoid being in a rush. Try to work with a decent AliExpress seller, whatever it might be, so you're not in a huge rush to move over. Try to start the agent conversation process as early as possible. Don't just wait until a time when you have like 500 orders backed up and they're a week old and you just really need an agent right away. You really want to take a little bit more time and thought in this whole process. And then once you actually find the perfect agent for your business needs at the time, you should always try to maintain your relationships with other great agents as well through the process. Don't just burn bridges. Don't just completely ghost them. Because, as your business needs change, or maybe even you realize that your selected agent is really not good enough, you really want backups. And assuming you're going through this process, you might have at least one or two other agents that you really generally like, but they weren't perfect for your needs for whatever reason. You want to be able to swap back to them and continue the conversation. So keep those warm so that if anything happens, that your business needs change, then it'll be a smooth process of getting in communications with another agent that you might have conversated with, but you didn't start working with yet. All right, so that's the general process. Now let's talk about some common watch outs and risks to look out for to protect your business. Now, we actually have another video on this that is more talking about common supplier tricks. So I'll link to that below. So I won't talk about all of the supplier tricks, but I'm going to talk about a couple things that you should specifically watch out when you're dealing with a private agent. Now, so generally speaking, you want to avoid agents who, first, you really want to avoid agents who recommend you products. My personal feeling is that agents shouldn't recommend products at all, except if it's like a very slightly upgraded version or slight difference of variants of the current product. If they're sharing products for whatever the reason, if they share products with you, you don't know if they're going to share your hot product with other clients as well. Your niche might be shared. Technically speaking, people working with agents are going to be more successful and they have more orders, which means that if your product then gets shared to other successful dropshippers, that just creates competition for you. The agent gets more orders, makes more money, but you and whoever is also marketing that product, you kind of both lose out, right? Because then you're directly competing with each other and sometimes not even knowing about it. So it's a very short-term view. The agent might win out, but it hurts you, it hurts whoever the competitor might be, and I think it's just bad for the industry in general. Second is that you definitely want to avoid agents who are smaller in scale. They can be lower priced, that's fine. Some lower priced agents actually are very scalable. They're just lower priced for different reasons. You want to avoid someone that's smaller in scale because they can't handle the volume to support scaling. To get to the level where it's like, okay, you're now 50 orders per day and you really want to hit 500 orders per day, that's where the real money is. That's where you really get to make $1 million and you can buy the Lambo if you really want. If your agent is literally limited, they just can't fulfill for you at that kind of volume, then that's going to hold you back. That holds your upside, which means that you're not going to grow to your full potential. And then the other thing here is that it's not just necessarily about capacity, but it's also about their experience and ability to actually deal with issues. They're going to be fine if they just order batches of simple goods, they just fulfill it. I mean, that part of it is relatively easy. But then, okay, what if the factory has delays? Are they going to be on the phone, 5 hours a day working out a plan for you? They don't have the resources to do that, right? So that's part of the issue as well, is that these kinds of smaller agents, they're going to be able to support you during the good times, but when there are issues, they might not be able to have the experience or resources to deal with them. Finally, on the right, I mean, this is something that is actually very time relevant because right now it's August and it's COVID is still happening, and you kind of want to avoid agents who just seems to shut down in hard times, whether it's something like COVID or whatever it might be. We've seen a lot of actually agents just shut down during this time and they actually start back again, getting new clients. But you kind of want to avoid people like that. You kind of want to work with people who's worked through COVID, who's worked with their clients, who try to deal with it as much as possible, because again, you want to work with an agent who's got your back, who's going to be a long-term partner. You don't want a situation to happen where COVID or any other kind of logistics disruption happens and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. It's too hard for them. You might not lose money because they might just say, hey, like, look, I'll fulfill the rest of your orders, but we got to stop operating. But still, even if it's that, they might not scam you or make you lose money, but then you got to scramble to find another agent. You got to kind of build your supply chain again. And trust me, you don't want to deal with that. Now, these three key points, they're really more focused on private agents. There's going to be a lot more things you got to be careful of that I put in another YouTube video, the top 5 supplier tricks. So make sure to check that out as well, because I didn't want to talk about all of that. So I'll link that video below as well. All right, everyone. Well, hope that was helpful. If you like this video, really would appreciate a like and a subscribe. It really helps this channel grow. Turn on notifications as well, because we're going to keep turning out more content like this in the future. So make sure to be notified. And like I said at the beginning, we are a premium fulfillment service, EcommOps. We're going to be a little bit more on the costly side, but we price very, very fairly, and we generally believe in dealing with dropshippers as partners, and we do business very, very differently than other smaller agents. So if you have good volume, reach out to us. I'm going to link to us below. We love to hear from you. All right, everyone. So again, this is Dayu from EcommOps. See you guys next time.